The water world of Zephyr Prime sparkled like a blue jewel in the darkness of space. Its crystal cities rose from vast oceans, their towers reaching toward the stars that had watched over the Zephyrian people for millions of years. The gentle aquatic beings had built a civilization of beauty and wisdom, spreading their knowledge across dozens of worlds throughout their corner of the galaxy. But today, terror filled every heart on Zephyr Prime. High above the planet's atmosphere, something impossible hung in the void. It was massive beyond understanding, a thing that defied description. Part machine, part creature, part something else entirely. The scientists called it the Devourer, though the name felt too small for what they witnessed. It stretched across space like a living nightmare, its surface crawling with metallic tentacles and pulsing organic matter. Elder Kythera floated in the command chamber of the Planetary Defense Station, her blue-green skin pale with fear. Through the transparent walls, she could see the smaller ships of her people trying desperately to evacuate civilians. But there were too many people and too little time. The Devourer had already consumed 3 of their outer colonies, and each world it ate made it larger and stronger. "Elder, the defense grid has failed," reported Captain Velmos, his voice shaking. "Our most powerful weapons barely scratched its surface. The evacuation ships, they're not fast enough." Kythera closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her people's doom. In her long life, she had seen their civilization reach heights of art, science, and philosophy that filled her with pride. Now she would see it all end. "How long do we have?" she asked. 6 hours until it reaches the planet's surface," came the reply. 6 hours. Kythera thought of the children in the underwater schools, the artists creating their final masterpieces, the scientists still working to find a solution even as death approached. Her people faced extinction, but they would not go quietly into that dark silence. "Activate the archive protocol," she commanded. The technicians around her looked up in surprise. The archive protocol was theoretical, a desperate plan that had never been tested. It would take everything they had learned, everything they were, and broadcast it into space in the hope that someone, somewhere, might receive it. "Elder, the power requirements," Captain Velmos began. "Will drain our remaining defenses, yes," Kythera finished. "But what good are defenses against something we cannot stop? If we must die, let our death serve a purpose." The great broadcast array began to power up, drawing energy from every remaining power source on the planet. In the depths of their cities, the massive computers that stored their civilization's knowledge hummed to life one final time. Every piece of art, every scientific discovery, every story and song and dream of the Zephyrian people was compressed into a signal that would travel across the galaxy. But the message was more than just their history. It was a warning. Dr. Cethus, the chief xenobiologist, worked frantically at his station. His tentacles moved across the controls as he added critical data to the broadcast. "Elder, I'm including everything we learned about the Devourer. Its attack patterns, its weaknesses, the way it grows stronger with each world it consumes." "Will it help?" Kythera asked. "I don't know," Cethus admitted. "But perhaps someone out there will be smarter than us. Perhaps they will find a way to stop what we could not." The broadcast array reached full power, and the message began to transmit. It would travel on every frequency known to science, encoded in mathematics that any intelligent species would understand. Along with their warning about the Devourer, they included star charts showing the locations of other civilizations, other worlds that might become targets. Through the chamber's windows, they could see the Devourer beginning its final approach. Massive tendrils reached down toward the planet's surface, each one large enough to wrap around a city. The ocean began to boil where they touched. "The message is away," reported the communications officer. "It will reach the nearest inhabited systems in approximately 4,000 years." 4,000 years. By then, the Devourer would be long gone, and their beautiful world would be nothing but cosmic dust. But maybe, just maybe, their warning would save others from the same fate. Elder Kithara activated the planetary communication system one final time. Her voice carried to every remaining Zephyrian on the planet, to the evacuation ships fleeing through space, to the brave souls still trying to fight the inevitable. "My people," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "We have sent our message to the stars. Our knowledge, our culture, our warning about this ancient evil, all of it travels now to distant worlds. We may die today, but our voice will live on. Someone will hear us. Someone will understand, and perhaps they will succeed where we have failed." The first evacuation ship disappeared into the Devourer's maw, then another. The great cities began to crack and crumble as the massive entity fed upon the planet's core. But still the broadcast continued, powered by the dying world's last energy. Captain Velmos stood beside his elder, watching their civilization end. "Do you think they'll listen?" he asked. "These strangers who might receive our message?" Kithara watched the Devourer's tendrils wrap around the broadcast station. In moments, they too would be consumed. "I have to believe they will," she said. "I have to believe that somewhere in this vast galaxy, there are people who will hear a cry for help and choose to answer it." The station shook as the Devourer's grip tightened. Equipment sparked and failed around them, but the broadcast array continued to function, sending their message out into the endless night. "Perhaps they will be stronger than us," Kithara continued. "Perhaps they will be braver. Perhaps they will refuse to let this evil continue its work unchallenged." The walls began to crack. Water rushed in as the station's hull breached. But Kithara felt no fear, only hope. Somewhere among the stars, her people's message was traveling toward an unknown destiny. With her final breath, she spoke words that would echo across 4 millennia. "We call out to the galaxy. We call out to any who will listen. Do not let our death be meaningless. Do not let this evil consume others as it has consumed us. Please, someone answer our call." The broadcast station collapsed into the Devourer's hunger. The crystal cities fell silent forever. Within hours, Zephyr Prime was gone, leaving only empty space where a world had once thrived. But their message flew on through the cosmic dark, carrying the hopes and dreams of a dead civilization toward distant stars. It would travel for thousands of years, waiting for someone to hear it, to understand it, to care enough to act upon it. The Devourer, satisfied with its feast, slowly moved away from the dead system. Behind it, only silence remained. But ahead of the broadcast signal, racing through space at the speed of light, lay countless worlds full of life and possibility. Somewhere among those worlds, someone would eventually receive the Zephyrians' final gift. Someone would hear their warning, someone would learn their story, and perhaps, when the time came, someone would answer their ancient call for help. Dr. Sarah Chen rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the computer screen again. She had been staring at the same data for 12 hours straight, and the coffee had stopped working hours ago. Around her, the Deep Space Communications Center hummed, with quiet activity as dozens of scientists monitored signals from across the galaxy. Most of what they received was natural noise from stars and pulsars. Sometimes they picked up random signals from other civilizations, but those were usually just everyday communications that got lost in space. Nothing particularly interesting, but this signal was different. "Sarah, you need to go home," said Dr. Martinez, her research partner. "You've been here since yesterday morning." "I can't leave this," Sarah replied, pointing at the screen. "Look at these patterns. This isn't random stellar noise or accidental transmissions. This is purposeful, complex, and it's old, Martinez. Really old." The signal had first been detected 3 days ago by the monitoring station on Luna. At first, the Computers had classified it as background radiation, but something about its structure caught Sarah's attention. She was an expert in xenolinguistics, the study of alien languages, and her trained eye could spot artificial patterns in seemingly random data. "How old?" Martinez asked, pulling up a chair beside her. "Based on the signal degradation and the stellar drift calculations, I'd estimate around 4,000 years, Sarah said. This message has been traveling through space since before the pyramids were built." Martinez whistled softly. "That's impossible. We've never detected anything that organized from that far back." Sarah pulled up another screen showing the signal's mathematical structure. "It's not just organized, it's brilliant. Look at this encoding method. They used prime number sequences as carrier waves, then layered multiple information streams on top of each other. Whoever sent this knew exactly how to make sure it would be recognizable to any technological civilization." Over the next few days, Sarah assembled a team of linguists, mathematicians, and computer specialists. They worked around the clock to decode the ancient message, and what they found made everyone in the room fall silent. The message began with simple mathematical concepts, building up to more complex ideas. Then came star charts, showing the location of the sender's home system. After that, detailed diagrams of technology beyond anything humans had ever imagined. But it was the final section that made Sarah's blood run cold. "It's a warning," she announced to the assembled team. "They're warning us about something called the Devourer." The Zephyrian message painted a terrifying picture. The Devourer was an ancient entity that moved through the galaxy in cycles, consuming entire civilizations. The message included data from dozens of previous attacks, showing a pattern that stretched back millions of years. Dr. Kim, the team's mathematician, had been working on the temporal calculations. According to their data, the Devourer follows a roughly 4,000-year cycle. If they're right about the timing, it's due to return soon, Sarah finished. Maybe within the next few years. The implications hit the room like a physical blow. This wasn't just an archaeological discovery anymore. It was a death sentence for every living thing in the galaxy. Sarah immediately contacted Admiral Harrison at Space Command. Within hours, she found herself in a secure briefing room, presenting her findings to the highest levels of human government. "Let me understand this," said President Williams. "An alien civilization sent us a warning about a galaxy-destroying monster 4,000 years ago, and you think this monster is coming back?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Sarah replied. "And there's more. The message includes technical specifications for weapons and shields that might be effective against the Devourer. The Zephyrians weren't just warning us, they were trying to help us fight it." Admiral Harrison studied the translated documents. "These weapon designs are centuries ahead of our current technology. Some of these concepts we don't even understand." "But we could learn," Sarah insisted. The Zephyrians included detailed explanations of the underlying principles. "With enough time and resources, we could build these weapons." The president leaned back in his chair. "Dr. Chen, you're asking us to restructure our entire civilization based on a 4,000-year-old message about a threat we've never seen." "I'm asking you to take the warning seriously," Sarah replied. "The Zephyrians died trying to protect people they would never meet. The least we can do is listen to what they're telling us." Over the following weeks, Sarah's team continued to decode more sections of the message. They found cultural records, scientific theories, and artistic works from not just the Zephyrians, but from dozens of other extinct civilizations. The message was a museum of the dead, a library of lost worlds. But the most chilling discovery came when Dr. Kim finished his analysis of the Devourer's movement patterns. "It's not random," he announced during one of their daily briefings. "The Devourer follows galactic spiral arms, consuming civilizations in a specific order. Based on the pattern and our location in the galaxy, we're next." Sarah felt sick. "How long do we have?" "If the cycle holds true, anywhere from 6 months to 3 years, Kim replied. "The Zephyrian calculations aren't precise enough to give us an exact date." That night, Sarah sat alone in her office, staring at the translated message on her screen. Hidden within the technical specifications and star charts, she had found something else: personal messages from the dying Zephyrians. They were notes to their families, poems about their beautiful ocean world, and prayers to whatever gods they worshipped. One message stood out among the rest. It was from Elder Kithara, the leader who had authorized the broadcast. To whoever receives this message, we know we will not live to see your response, but we hope that our sacrifice might help you succeed where we have failed. You are not alone in this universe. You are not the first to face this darkness, but perhaps you will be the first to defeat it. We believe in you, strangers across the stars. Please do not let our hope be wasted. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. Somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of human government, committees were forming to debate the message's authenticity. Scientists were questioning the data. Politicians were worried about the cost of preparing for a threat that might not come. But Sarah knew the truth. The Zephyrians had died trying to save people they would never meet. Their entire civilization had sacrificed itself to send a warning across 4,000 years of space and time. The question now was simple. Would humanity listen? Sarah picked up her phone and called Admiral Harrison. "Sir, I need to speak with you about organizing a response." "Team, if we're going to build these weapons in time, we need to start now." "Dr. Chen, the committees haven't finished their evaluation yet," the Admiral replied. "With respect, sir, we don't have time for committees," Sarah said. 4,000 years. Ago. An entire civilization died trying to warn us. The least we can do is try to build what they designed for us. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Admiral Harrison spoke. "I'll arrange a meeting with the Joint Chiefs tomorrow morning. Bring everything you have." As Sarah hung up the phone, she looked one more time at Elder Kithara's message. The ancient Zephyrian had believed that someone would hear their call and respond. She had died with hope in her heart, trusting that strangers across the galaxy would care enough to act. Sarah would not let that faith be wasted. Somehow humanity would answer the Zephyrians' call for help. Even if they were 4,000 years too late to save them, they could still honor their sacrifice by stopping the Devourer from claiming any more worlds. The ancient message continued to play on her screen, carrying its warning and its hope through the endless night between the stars. The United Nations Assembly had never seen anything like it. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in stunned silence as Dr. Sarah Chen finished presenting the Zephyrian message. The translation played on screens throughout the chamber, showing the final moments of a civilization that had died trying to warn them. President Williams stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of world leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have 6 months to prepare for something that destroyed dozens of advanced civilizations. The question before us is simple. Do we unite to face this threat, or do we waste precious time arguing while death approaches?" The Chinese representative raised his hand. "How do we know this message is real? How do we know it's not some elaborate hoax or misunderstanding?" Sarah stepped forward. "Because 3 other spacefaring civilizations have confirmed receiving similar warnings. The Altarians, the Crystalline Collective, and the Vegan Republic all detected versions of the same message. They're calling it an interesting archaeological find." "And what are they doing about it?" asked the Russian delegate. "Nothing," Sarah replied. "They're forming study committees and debate councils. The Altarians want to send a diplomatic mission to investigate. The Crystalline Collective believes they can negotiate with the Devourer when it arrives. The Vegans are planning to evacuate their core worlds and wait for it to pass." Admiral Harrison, now promoted to head the new Global Defense Initiative, stood beside Sarah. "While our galactic neighbors debate and retreat, we have a choice to make. We can follow their example and hope for the best, or we can do what humans do best: fight back." The vote was closer than anyone had hoped, but it passed. Within hours of the UN decision, construction began on facilities around the world. The greatest minds in human science were pulled from their regular work and assigned to Project Zephyr, the crash program to build weapons based on 4,000-year-old alien designs. Dr. Elena Vasquez led the physics team at the new facility in Nevada. The Zephyrian weapon specifications were unlike anything in human science, requiring breakthroughs in energy manipulation that should have taken decades to achieve. "The power requirements alone are insane," she told her team during their daily briefing. "We're essentially trying to compress a star's worth of energy into a weapon system small enough to mount on a spaceship." "The Zephyrians did it," pointed out Dr. Nakamura, her chief engineer. "Their technical specifications are detailed enough that we know it's possible." "But they had centuries to develop this technology," Elena replied. "We have months." Despite the impossible timeline, progress came faster than anyone expected. The Zephyrian designs were brilliant in their simplicity once humans understood the underlying principles. Within 3 months, the first prototype weapons were ready for testing. Meanwhile, Admiral Marcus Webb was tasked with rebuilding Earth's space fleet. The gruff veteran had spent 30 years preparing for conflicts with other human nations, never imagining he would end up leading humanity's defense against an ancient cosmic horror. "Sir, the shipyards are working around the clock," reported Captain Rodriguez, his new chief of staff. "But even with all our resources focused on this project, we'll only have about 200 ships ready when the Devourer arrives." Webb studied the tactical displays showing Earth's defensive preparations. "How many ships did the Zephyrians have when they faced it?" "According to their records, over 3,000, Rodriguez replied. "And they were more advanced than us." Webb nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to be smarter than them." The Zephyrian message had included more than just weapon designs. It contained detailed tactical analyses of the Devourer's previous attacks, showing how it had defeated each civilization it encountered. Webb spent sleepless nights studying these records, looking for patterns, weaknesses, anything that might give humanity an edge. As the months passed, reports came in from across the galaxy. The Altarian diplomatic mission had been launched, carrying messages of peace and offers of negotiation. The Crystalline Collective had moved their entire civilization to mobile space cities, ready to flee at the first sign of danger. The Vegans had simply abandoned their frontier worlds, retreating to their core systems. But on Earth, factories worked around the clock. Scientists pushed the boundaries of human knowledge. Military forces trained for a battle unlike any in human history. Sarah Chen found herself in an unexpected role as humanity's unofficial ambassador to the galaxy. Other civilizations wanted to know why the primitive humans were preparing for war instead of seeking diplomatic solutions. "Because someone has to," she replied during a subspace communication with the Altarian Council. "Your people have studied the Zephyrian message for months. You know the Devourer doesn't negotiate. It doesn't communicate. It simply consumes." "Violence is not the answer to every problem," replied Counselor Methrax, his melodic voice carrying across the light years. "Perhaps this entity can be reasoned with, redirected, or convinced to seek sustenance elsewhere." Sarah shook her head. "Counselor, the message includes data from 47 different civilizations that the Devourer destroyed. Some of them were pacifist societies that had never known war. Others were advanced beyond our current understanding. None of that mattered. The Devourer consumed them all." "But surely there must be a peaceful solution," Methrax insisted. "There was," Sarah replied. 4,000 years ago, the Zephyrians found it. They built weapons that could hurt this thing, and they sent us the blueprints before they died. The peaceful solution is to fight back." The conversation ended without agreement, as did most of Sarah's attempts to convince other species to join humanity's preparations. The galaxy seemed content to let the humans exhaust themselves building weapons against a threat that might never come. Then, the deep space monitors detected it. The Devourer had returned to the galaxy, appearing at the edge of the spiral arm exactly where the Zephyrian calculations had predicted. It was massive beyond imagining, a thing of metal and flesh that dwarfed entire star systems. Within hours of its appearance, the first worlds went silent. The Devourer began its ancient work, consuming planets with terrifying efficiency. Each world it ate made it larger, stronger, more terrible. Admiral Webb stood in the command center of the newly constructed battle station orbiting Earth. Around him, displays showed the position of humanity's fleet, the status of their weapons, and the steady approach of cosmic death. "All ships report ready, sir," announced Captain Rodriguez. Webb nodded, then activated the galaxy-wide communication system. His message would reach every inhabited world, every space station, every ship in known space. "To all civilizations of the galaxy, this is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Fleet. 4,000 years ago, the Zephyrian people died trying to warn us about this day. They gave us the tools to fight back, and by God, we're going to use them." He paused, looking out at the stars where the Devourer was beginning its inexorable advance toward populated systems. The Zephyrians asked for help that never came. They died believing someone would answer their call. Today, humanity answers. We may be 4,000 years late, but we're here. Webb's voice carried across the galaxy, reaching the Altarian diplomats. The fleeing crystalline cities, the hidden vegan worlds, and dozens of other civilizations that had received the ancient warning. "This is Admiral Webb to any who will listen. The Zephyrians called out to the galaxy, and humanity heard them. We're going to honor their sacrifice. We're going to stop this thing, or die trying." The human fleet began to move. 200 ships, carrying weapons built from ancient alien knowledge and powered by human determination. Behind them, Earth watched and waited, knowing that everything they had ever known depended on the courage of strangers who had died trying to save them. As the fleet reached deep space, Sarah Chen sent one final message to the galaxy. 4,000. "Years ago you asked for help. We heard you. We're coming." In the depths of space, the Devourer continued its advance, unaware that for the first time in millennia, something was coming to meet it. Something that refused to run, refused to hide, and refused to let an ancient cry for help go unanswered. The human fleet sailed on through the darkness, carrying the hopes of the dead and the determination of the living toward a confrontation that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The Kepler colony was humanity's furthest outpost, a small research station orbiting a red dwarf star at the edge of civilized space. Dr. James Park was analyzing stellar radiation patterns when his instruments detected something impossible moving through the darkness between stars. "Control, this is Kepler Station," he transmitted back to Earth. "I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies in Sector 7. Something big is coming our way." The response took 20 minutes to arrive due to the vast distances involved. "Kepler Station, please confirm your readings. Our deep space monitors show nothing unusual in your sector." Park checked his instruments again, then looked out through the station's observation deck. What he saw made his blood freeze. Against the backdrop of distant stars, something vast and terrible was blotting out the light. It moved with purpose, its massive form rippling with unnatural energy. "Control, visual confirmation of contact," Park transmitted, his voice shaking. "It's here. The Devourer is here." Across the galaxy, other civilizations were just beginning to realize the scope of what they faced. The Altarian diplomatic ship Harmony approached the Devourer with messages of peace and offerings of tribute. Captain Vithel transmitted on every frequency, speaking in dozens of languages, pleading for communication. The Devourer's response was swift and terrible. Massive tendrils erupted from its surface, each one larger than the diplomatic ship. The Harmony vanished into the Devourer's maw without even time to send a distress signal. The ancient entity continued its advance as if nothing had happened. On the crystal cities of the collective homeworld, the governing matrices calculated their response to the approaching threat. Logic dictated evacuation, but the Devourer moved faster than their projections had indicated. By the time the evacuation order was given, it was already too late. The crystalline beings watched in terror as their beautiful geometric cities were consumed by writhing organic matter. Their advanced technology, their perfect logic, their centuries of peaceful development, none of it mattered. The Devourer fed on their civilization as it had fed on countless others. Admiral Webb received reports of each destroyed world with growing rage. From the bridge of his flagship, the newly constructed battlecruiser Zephyr's Revenge, he watched the tactical displays showing the Devourer's unstoppable advance. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from 17 different systems," reported Communications Officer Liu. "The Vegan Republic is requesting immediate evacuation assistance. The Altarian Council is begging for military aid." "Where were they when we were building our fleet?" growled Captain Rodriguez. "Where were they when we asked for their help?" Webb held up a hand for silence. "Belay that, Captain. We're not fighting this thing for their gratitude. We're fighting it because it's the right thing to do." He turned to the communication station. "Officer Liu, transmit to all requesting assistance. The human defense fleet is en route. Hold your positions if possible. If not, evacuate civilian populations and fall back to designated rally points." The human fleet had been moving toward the Devourer for 3 days, but the ancient entity was advancing faster than anyone had anticipated. Each world it consumed made it larger and more powerful. What had started as a massive creature was becoming something beyond description, a living nightmare that defied the laws of physics. Dr. Sarah Chen, now serving as the fleet's xenobiology advisor, studied the sensor readings from their approaching target. "Admiral, the energy signatures don't match anything in the Zephyrian records. It's grown since their time." "Evolved." Webb nodded grimly. "How much of an advantage does that give?" Unknown, Sarah admitted, but the basic weaknesses should still apply. The Zephyrians found that concentrated energy attacks could damage its core structure. The question is whether our weapons are powerful enough. As if summoned by their conversation, the first visual contact with the Devourer appeared on the main screen. Even prepared by the Zephyrian descriptions, the human crew fell silent at the sight of their enemy. It was impossibly vast, a writhing mass of metal and flesh that stretched across space like a living asteroid field. Tendrils the size of space stations reached out from its core, each one tipped with sensors and weapons beyond human understanding. The surface crawled with mechanical parasites and organic growths that pulsed with alien life. "Jesus Christ," whispered Rodriguez. "How did the Zephyrians even scratch that thing?" "With courage and desperation," Webb replied. "The same things we have." The Devourer had noticed their approach. Massive sensor arrays turned toward the human fleet, analyzing these new arrivals. For 4,000 years, the Devourer had encountered only prey, civilizations that fled, hid, or begged for mercy. But these creatures were different. They were moving toward it, not away. On a dozen different worlds, other species watched the human fleet's advance with a mixture of hope and terror. The logical response would be to retreat, to find a diplomatic solution, to accept the inevitable. But the humans seemed incapable of logical responses. The first attack came without warning. Energy beams that could vaporize mountains lanced out from the Devourer's weapon arrays, targeting the lead human ships. But the humans had studied the Zephyrian battle records and were ready. Their ships scattered in patterns designed to minimize damage, their new shields absorbing most of the devastating energy. "All ships, this is Admiral Webb," came the voice over the fleet communications. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. For the Zephyrians who died warning us, for every world this thing has consumed, for everyone counting on us to succeed. The human fleet opened fire with weapons based on ancient alien designs, but powered by human determination. Antimatter torpedoes and plasma cannons struck the Devourer's surface, and for the first time in millennia, the ancient entity felt pain. The creature's response was immediate and violent. More weapon arrays deployed from its surface, filling space with deadly energy. Several human ships were destroyed in the opening exchange, but the survivors pressed their attack with grim determination. "It's working!" shouted Sarah Chen from her station. "The weapons are damaging its outer shell!" But the Devourer was learning. Its surface began to adapt, developing new defenses against the human weapons. What had been effective minutes before was becoming less and less useful. "Admiral, we're losing effectiveness," reported the tactical officer. "It's adapting to our attack patterns." Webb watched the battle displays with calculating eyes. The Zephyrian records had mentioned this ability, but seeing it in action was different. The Devourer was not just a predator, it was an intelligent one. "All ships, implement Pattern Omega," Webb commanded. Pattern Omega was the desperate strategy they had hoped never to use. It involved concentrating all remaining firepower on a single point of the Devourer's structure while simultaneously ramming several ships into its core. It was a suicide mission, but it was the only way the Zephyrians had found to inflict serious damage. "Sir, Pattern Omega will require volunteers for the ramming attack," Rodriguez said quietly. "I know," Webb replied, "and I know who's volunteering." Before anyone could protest, Webb had transferred command to his executive officer and was heading for the shuttle bay. "Captain Rodriguez, you have the fleet. Follow Pattern Omega to completion." "Admiral, you can't," Rodriguez began. "I can and I will," Webb interrupted. "This is exactly what the Zephyrians did. Their leaders led from the front, and by God, so will I." Within minutes, Admiral Webb was leading a squadron of volunteer ships directly toward the Devourer's core. Behind them, the rest of the human fleet concentrated their fire on a single section of the creature's hull, creating the opening Webb's team needed. The Devourer fought back with desperate fury, throwing everything it had at the approaching humans. Ships died in brilliant explosions, their crews becoming martyrs in humanity's first galactic war. But still the survivors pressed forward. "This is Admiral Webb to all ships," came the final transmission. "Tell them we heard the call." "Tell them," we answered. "Tell them no one dies alone on our watch." The volunteer ships struck the Devourer's core in a coordinated attack that sent shockwaves through the massive entity. For a moment, the ancient creature's advance halted. For a moment, it seemed that the impossible had happened. But when the energy discharges cleared, the Devourer was still there, damaged, wounded, but not destroyed. The human attack had hurt it more than anything had in 4,000 years, but it was not enough. The surviving human ships regrouped, their ammunition nearly exhausted, their numbers devastated. On worlds across the galaxy, other species watched, in awe and terror as humanity's desperate gamble seemed to fail. But something had changed. The Devourer was no longer advancing with confident purpose. It hung in space, its massive form writhing as if in pain. For the first time in its ancient existence, it had encountered true resistance. And somewhere in the debris of the battle, Admiral Webb's final transmission continued to echo through space. "Tell them we answered the call." Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Zephyr's Revenge, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. The Devourer hung motionless in space, its massive form crackling with unstable energy. Admiral Webb's sacrifice had wounded the ancient entity, but it was still alive, still dangerous. "Damage report," Rodriguez commanded, his voice hoarse from hours of battle. 60% of the fleet destroyed or disabled," replied Lieutenant Chen, Sarah's younger sister who had volunteered for the mission. "Remaining ships have minimal ammunition and damaged systems." "But, sir," Look at this. She highlighted sections of the Devourer on the main screen. The creature is leaking energy from multiple breach points. Its adaptive systems seem to be failing. Whatever Admiral Webb did, it hurt the thing badly. Rodriguez studied the readings. For 4,000 years, the Devourer had been unstoppable, consuming civilizations without effort. But now, for the first time, it showed signs of real damage. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth Command," announced the communications officer. President Williams appeared on the screen, her face drawn with exhaustion and grief. "Captain Rodriguez, the entire planet is watching. We've received Admiral Webb's final message. His sacrifice won't be forgotten. But we need to know. Can you finish what he started?" Rodriguez looked around at his remaining crew. They were exhausted, frightened, and far from home. But in their eyes, he saw something that the Devourer had never encountered before in its long existence: absolute refusal to surrender. "Ma'am, we're going to try," he replied. "But we need more than we have." As if summoned by his words, new signals appeared on the sensor array. Ships were approaching from multiple directions, but these weren't human vessels. "Captain, I'm reading. Altarian battlecruisers, crystalline collective defense platforms, and vegan Republic strike fighters," reported the sensor operator in amazement. "They're all converging on our position." The communication channels erupted with transmissions from across the galaxy. Captain Vorthak of the Altarian fleet was the first to speak. "Human vessel, this is the Altarian Expeditionary Force. We have watched your battle with great interest. Perhaps there is wisdom in your approach after all." "This is Collective Node Prime," came the crystalline voice of the geometric beings. "Our calculations indicate that your tactics have achieved a 23.7% effectiveness rating against the entity. This exceeds all previous engagement parameters. We offer our assistance." Even the Vegan Republic, known for their pacifist philosophy, had sent their most advanced warships. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Admiral Kithrin of the Republic Fleet. Your Admiral Webb died as a warrior. We would be honored to fight beside his people." Rodriguez felt tears in his eyes. For months, humanity had stood alone, preparing for this battle while other civilizations debated and delayed. Now, in their darkest hour, the galaxy had finally answered their call for help. "All Allied ships, this is Captain Rodriguez," he transmitted. "We're going to finish what Admiral Webb started. But I need you to understand something. This isn't going to be a clean, technological battle. This is going to be ugly, desperate, and some of us aren't going home." "We understand," replied Captain Vorthak. "The humans have shown us that some things are worth dying for." The combined fleet moved toward the Devourer, but the ancient entity was far from finished. Sensing the approaching threat, it began to regenerate, drawing energy from the consumed worlds within its mass. New weapon arrays emerged from its surface, and the wounds from the human attack began to seal themselves. Sarah Chen, monitoring. The creature's energy patterns from her position on the Zephyr's Revenge made a terrifying discovery. "Captain, the Devourer is adapting again. It's incorporating the wreckage from our destroyed ships into its structure. It's learning from our technology." "Can it be stopped?" Rodriguez asked. Sarah studied the data streaming across her console. "Maybe. The Zephyrian records mention a critical vulnerability. If we can overload its core processing center with more energy than it can absorb, the entire structure should collapse." "How much energy are we talking about?" "More than we have," Sarah admitted. "More than all our ships combined could generate." Rodriguez was about to respond when Lieutenant Chen called out from her station. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from the Kepler colony." Dr. James Park appeared on the screen, his face grim but determined. "Captain Rodriguez, I've been monitoring your battle from the Outer Rim. I think I have a solution, but you're not going to like it." "We're listening, Doctor." "The red dwarf star in this system is unstable," Park explained. I can trigger a controlled collapse that will generate enough energy to power every weapon in your fleet simultaneously. But the explosion will destroy everything within a light-year radius. The implications hit Rodriguez immediately, including your station. Including my station, Park confirmed. But Captain, I've been studying the Zephyrian message for months. I know what they sacrificed to warn us. If my death can help stop this thing, then it's a good death. Around the bridge, the crew fell silent. One man, alone on a research station, was offering to give his life to save the galaxy. Doctor, there has to be another way, Rodriguez said. There isn't, Park replied, and we're running out of time. The Devourer is almost fully regenerated. Rodriguez looked at his crew, at the Allied ships surrounding them, at the ancient enemy that had consumed countless worlds. Then he made the hardest decision of his life. All ships, this is Captain Rodriguez. Prepare for coordinated bombardment on my signal. Dr. Park, proceed with the stellar collapse. The next few minutes passed in tense silence as Dr. Park initiated the sequence that would destroy his star. On his small station, he sent one final message to his family on Earth, then calmly began the process that would end his life. Stellar collapse in 30 seconds, Park transmitted. All ships, prepare to channel the energy released through your weapon systems. For the Zephyrians, for Admiral Webb, for everyone counting on us. The red dwarf star flickered, then collapsed, into itself with unimaginable force. The energy release was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, a burst of power that lit up space for light years in every direction. But instead of destroying the fleet, the energy was captured and channeled through their weapon systems. Human antimatter torpedoes, Altarian plasma cannons, crystalline energy beams, and vegan particle accelerators all fired simultaneously, creating a concentrated burst of power directed at the Devourer's core. The ancient entity tried to adapt, tried to absorb the incoming energy as it had absorbed everything else for millions of years. But this was too much, too fast, too focused. Its adaptive systems overloaded, its core structure began to collapse, and for the first time in its existence, the Devourer experienced something it had never known: fear. The creature's death was not quiet. It writhed and screamed across multiple dimensions, its massive form breaking apart as the stolen energy of countless worlds was released back into space. The ships that had been absorbed over millennia burst free from its hull, their crews long dead, but their sacrifice finally avenged. When the energy discharge finally faded, only empty space remained where the Devourer had been. The galaxy's ancient nightmare was finally over. In the silence that followed, Captain Rodriguez spoke into the fleet communications. All ships, this is Captain Rodriguez. The Devourer is destroyed. The galaxy is safe. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ships across the combined fleet erupted in celebration. On worlds throughout known space, billions of beings who had watched the battle in terror now cried out in joy and relief. But Rodriguez felt no celebration, only profound sadness for those who had not lived to see this moment. Admiral Webb, Dr. Park, the thousands of crew members who had died in the battle, and most of all, the Zephyrians who had died 4,000 years ago trying to make this victory possible. "Sir," said Lieutenant Chen quietly, "incoming transmission from Earth." President Williams appeared on the screen, tears streaming down her face. "Captain, the entire planet is celebrating. You did it. You actually did it." "We had help, ma'am," Rodriguez replied, "and we had a guide. 4,000 years ago, the Zephyrians showed us the way. Over the following days, as the combined fleet made its way back to their respective homes, plans were made for a memorial. It would be built in the ruins of the Zephyrian homeworld, a monument to the civilization that had died trying to save strangers across time and space. But more than that, the galaxy had been fundamentally changed. The species that had stood apart in isolation now worked together. The civilizations that had avoided conflict now understood the necessity of standing up to evil. The scattered worlds of known space began to forge connections that would last for millennia. Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of the Zephyr's Revenge, watching the stars as they made their way to the memorial site. In her hands, she held a datapad containing the final section of the Zephyrian message, the part that had taken her months to decode. It was a simple message from Elder Cathara, the leader who had authorized the broadcast that saved the galaxy. 2. Whoever receives this message. We do not know if you will be able to stop what we could not. We do not know if our sacrifice will mean anything. But we know this. Somewhere among the stars, there are people